Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 86. I'm Adam.
I'm Patrick.
And I'm Brian.
As usual, before we get into our game of the week this week, we want to invite you over to our YouTube channel, our Twitter account, our Facebook page. Go over there, subscribe, watch some of our videos, give us a like if you enjoy what you see, and keep checking back to see what we've been playing.
This week's game of the week is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shadows of the Past. And we're going to start with the setup on the villain side. One player is going to be playing the villains against the other players who are going to take on the role of the Ninja Turtles. The villain player will be told which characters we have in the game. So for instance, in the first scenario, you just have Street Thug Gunner and Street Thug Brawler. So you'll take the player boards for the corresponding characters. It will tell you a number of focus points you'll get. These are what you spend to allow you to re-roll dice. And then it'll tell you what you have to put in your deck of cards to correspond with the characters of what you can play. If you look at the character cards, I'll pull one up here. This is a minion. It has a move of 3. So whenever he moves, he gets to move 3 spaces. When he activates an attack, he gets 1 attack here plus the attack on the card he plays. His defense is 2 plus the defense on the card. And it tells how many life points they have and any special abilities in the white there. So on turn, the villain player can play 2 cards from their deck. They'll have 5 in their hand, and they'll choose any 2 to play. So let's say I chose to play this one right here. Okay? Can't you idiots hit anything? This allows the Thug Gunner, this character, to take 2 distance attacks. That is the throwing stars there. So what I can do is I can choose 1 Thug Gunner on the board to basically attack for 2, and then I can add an attack of the character. Then I play a second card on my turn. So let's say I want to activate my Brawlers. This card lets me play 1 Brawler, and he can move and attack or attack and move. This says what he says. It also gives him a little defense bonus, because normally the Brawler only has a defense of 2. He rolls 2 dice when he's attacked. Now as long as this card's in play, he will roll 4 dice to defend against the Ninja Turtles attacking him. But that's kind of how it works, is the card tells you who's going to activate, what they can do on this turn, and you combine that with their attributes up here to let you know what you do, and we'll show that in the gameplay in a moment.
Alright, now that we've got the villain turn out of the way and the villain set up, talk about the turtles, which is a little more complicated. You got all 4 turtles. Right here we have the Eastman art style turtles out. The original, or the standard version of the game, comes with the art style from the comic right now. So it'll be a different character card, at least a different look, but the attributes on it will be the same. So when you're setting up for your character, you get your pizza, which is your life for each character. 1 whole pizza pie is 5 hit points, and then you have individual slices for the extra. Those go on the character board. You also get focus points, which are different depending on the scenario. It's your skill points plus or minus a certain number depending on the scenario. And those focus points are what you'll use to re-roll dice, both when you're doing your action dice at the beginning as well as your attack and defense dice during the round. But otherwise, the board is set up with your special ability for each character listed in the main box, and then your attributes: move, attack, defend, skill, and focus listed down the middle of the board. Bottom left of the board here you'll see is an indication of what the different action dice have for each character. Those action dice are different depending on the character. As you can see above here, they're differently colored, but they also have different sides depending on which character you're playing. At the beginning of the round, before you get going, you'll be allowed to choose a certain number of special ability cards too for each turtle, and they each have a handful of cards to choose from. The scenario will tell you how many special ability cards you get to pick. Those are cards that will let you do special things depending on which action dice you spend to activate them. You can activate 1 special ability per round per turtle. The special abilities are something you're going to want to coordinate between the different players that are handling the turtles to make sure that you have all of your grounds as far as range special abilities, close-up special abilities, defense special abilities covered. So once you have all of that set up, you'll then simultaneously, as the turtles, roll their action dice. Now the action dice have many different sides. You have the throwing star for your distance attack, the skateboard for your movement, the katana and shell, which is a combination attack and defense side, and then the katana, which is just the melee attack. And then the last side they all have is the cheese sign, which is is basically a wild. If you roll that, you get to regain 1 focus, you get to regain 1 health, and then you can roll it to whatever side you want it to be. You can never get more focus or health than your max for your character, though, for that round. So you roll, each of the turtles will roll all their action dice, and then they'll set them up above their character cards. Now, the order you set up those action dice is important because the action dice on the ends, so the katana here and the katana here, are shared by the turtles that are next on either side of them. So Donatello would share with Leonardo all the way down here, and Leonardo could share that 1 katana. Now, Raph is special because Raph can't actually share any of the other turtles' dice. He can't use their dice during his turn, but he can share his dice with the other turtles. So when Raph's putting his dice out, you want to make sure that he's arranging the end die to help the other characters. So Donatello, for instance, doesn't have any movement. It's important then that Raph would put that movement die over on the end here so Donatello can move. Same thing on Michelangelo on the end here. Having the katana on this end of Raph is important because Michelangelo doesn't have any close range melee attacks. So you want to, when you roll these dice, all the characters playing as the turtles are going to want to coordinate where they place the dice, what order they're in, but they'll also want to coordinate whether or not they're going to spend a focus to re-roll. Now, Donatello in this scenario might be a perfect example of where you want to re-roll because all he has is close combat melee. You spend a focus, you can re-roll 1 or all of the die and try to get a better combination. You can only re-roll once, though. That counts both for the action dice as well as the combat dice that you're playing with. As you play through the round, each character goes. When you use an action die, you put a manhole cover over it until you've used all the action die, including the adjacent ones from the other turtles. So be Raph's skateboard there. Once all of the die are used, or you don't want to use any more, you take the manhole covers off, you put a stop sign above the turtle, and that means that turtle is done and can't go again, but the other turtles can still use his die on their turns. And that's a basic rundown of how the turtles' turns work. Alright, so let's go through a turn as one of the turtles. I'm going to go with Michelangelo here. He's got a movement die, a defense die, and a ranged attack die, plus the dice he can share with the 2 turtles next to him. So starting out as Mikey, I'm going to use a ranged attack to try to hit this gunner right here. So I'll put the manhole cover over the ranged attack, and your attacks work as your normal attack value plus however many attack die you can use. So I have 1 attack die, and then my attack value is 1, so I get to roll 2 attack die. Roll them there, and I got 2 hits. Now the defending player then, the gunner, would roll however many defense die he gets, depending on his character. And he rolled 2 defense, blocking both of Mikey's attacks. So next, Mikey, not having done anything with his ranged attack, is going to move up on the gunner, so he's going to spend that skateboard. And your move is skateboards times your normal movement. So it's, or your normal move amount. So move is 4 for Mikey. 1 skateboard gets him 4 spaces. So he's going to go up to the gunner, 1, 2, and use his melee attack by sharing with Raph over here. Just like his ranged attack, he's going to cover it with a manhole. It's 1 ranged attack plus his attack value, which is 1, so it's 2 die. He'd roll. He's got 1 hit, 1 block, and the gunner again would roll his defense. 1 hit, 1 block, so he blocks all the damage. Now Mikey has another movement left over. If he wanted to run away from the gunner, he could use that. But when you move away from a character, there is a breakaway value. It's always 1 extra movement to get away from every character you're adjacent to. So in this case, it would cost 2 just to break away from the runner. Also, he's got the shell there, which you don't use during your turn. You use that on your defense. That's your defense die. And again, defense is like attack. For every defense die, you add that on to your defense value, which in this case is 3. And that's how many dice you'd roll. So for Mikey, it would be 4 defense die.
Now the villains play a little bit differently. They activate through cards rather than dice, and I played 2 cards on my turn. So I've got my Street Thug Brawlers, my Street Thug Gunners available. I look at the 5 cards in my hand, and let's say I want to activate my Brawlers first. Okay, this says I can activate 2 Brawlers because it says times 2 up in the top. It shows a picture that matches the character down here, so I never get confused as to who I'm activating. And they get a double movement and 1 melee attack. And you can use those in either order. Attack first, move second, move first, attack second. So I'm going to choose 1 brawler right here. He can move 3 spaces. 6 because it's a double movement, but he's just going to run up on Mikey anyway, so he'd go 1, 2, 3, and then he gets 1 attack, plus his 1 attack here. He rolls 2 attack dice, just like the Ninja Turtles there, and he'd get 1 hit and 1 block, so basically just 1 hit. The Ninja Turtles would then roll, and there you go, they blocked his 1 hit because of the shell they rolled. I get to activate a second Street Thug Brawler now. So I would move 1. Again, I can do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice I did not count Leonardo's adjacent because I'm up on a building and he's down at street level. And then I could do the same thing. I could attack. And it's the same. I'd roll 2 attack dice to attack him. Then I get to play a second card. Now I cannot activate the same 2 figures. I could activate 2 others, or some other Street Thug Brawlers if I wanted to. But I could not activate the 2 that already moved this turn. However, I want to move my thugs. They're the ones with the guns. And so this gives a movement, and then a distance attack. That's what the throwing star is. So I would choose this guy here, and you know what? I'm not even going to move. Maybe I just wanted to just shoot at Raphael. And so I would get 1 plus his attack of 1. I'd roll 2 attack dice, and it plays pretty much exactly the same way. And then we'd go back to the turtles. It would come back to me, and I could play 2 more cards. But the only other thing worth noting is this card, if you notice, has a shell down here. That adds 1 defense to the Street Thug Gunners, since it's on their card. So as long as this is in front of me, they get 1 extra defense die to roll. So on my next turn, I'd play 2 more cards. So I'll just take 2 more. And they would go over here. I'd play this one, play it out. I'd play this one, play it out. On my third turn, what happens is these 2 slide away. These 2 slide down, and I play 2 more. So as the game goes on, you pretty much always have 4 active cards in front of you. Let's start with strategies. I usually play the villain side, so I can mostly speak from that one side of the board per se, but I guess a good strategy as the villain is definitely watch where and how often you're spawning. For instance, in the second scenario, it's narrow alleyways and choke points, and the spawn points are in that alley, so you can quickly block up and you can block the larger elite Foot Clan guy so he can't get out. So figure placement, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is really important because the maps are always small. There's a couple boards big. That's it.
And from the hero side of it, the initial roll when you're getting your action dice in place is obviously crucial, both in what you roll, but also in the placement of those dice. So when you're sharing them with the other characters, making sure every character has a move, has a defense, has some type of attack, whether it's a melee or a ranged attack, and making sure, and even the order of the turtles makes sense. That'd be from the beginning, deciding where you want the turtles to be, especially because Raph can't share other turtles' dice. But then after that, where you put your action dice, what order you put them in, and then coordinating with whoever's playing the other turtles, whether it's a one player handling all 4, or if it's 4 people each handling a separate turtle. Okay, where are you going to place your dice? Do I need to re-roll to get us something better? Use a focus for that kind of thing.
Another thing on the turtle side is thinking ahead a few moves, because you'll be able to play your turtles in the order that you want them to play. So you have to kind of guess where your opponent is going to be moving their pieces, finding those choke points, placing the correct turtle at the correct time in the correct place. So there's a lot of cooperation that needs to occur on the turtle side to make sure that that synergy is there and that everyone's working with each other to provide coverage.
And to kind of build off of that, the reason you got to think so many moves in advance is because after each turtle, the villain goes. So you got to think, okay, I'm going to go. What's the villain going to do, and how's that going to affect the next turtle?
And there's going to be what's the next turtle in play going to be. The other thing is make sure you pay attention to their special abilities and their cards. It's very easy to get tied up on the miniatures that you forget to activate.
The action dice.
The action dice, but how they trigger your cards, your special abilities that are in your hand, and then the special abilities on their card. Raphael is pretty easy because his special abilities you just can't work with anybody. But for example, 1 space for free, or able to find more focus tokens, or you have to remember those in place to make sure they're playing. On the other side of things, the terrain sometimes gets a little tricky into play. It's sometimes easy to forget all the different terrain motions. Now, I've played another game before that utilized terrains with similar colors and similar function, but remembering that you can climb, that you can crouch, that you can grind the rail, that you can drop down. I think in our second game, if you would have remembered to climb up to the building and started charging across, you would have opened yourself up. You wouldn't have gotten involved in your choke points as much. I think we're able to bog you down because of that.
Well, the problem is you need a double movement. I mean, it's kind of hard to do because you have to have the right card at the right time.
That's true. Yeah. That is true. But there are those things that play off of each other rather than moving him up. Keeping him back maybe until you got that. But those are difficult. Those are sometimes there's so much going on at times that sometimes you have to step back before your turn and see what all of your actions and what your options are.
And that gets to those special ability cards, which again is something that you need to coordinate with the turtle players at the beginning, because each character has, I can't remember, a handful of special ability cards, and depending on the scenario, they can choose a certain number that they'll be able to use. It's important to coordinate, okay, maybe Donnie's going to use a special ability where he can throw another turtle or another character a certain distance. That way Mikey doesn't need to use that ability. He can do more of a defense ability, and Leo can do more of a leadership, offense ability, that kind of thing.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question on the enemy side. I haven't played that side yet, but on the enemy side, was it difficult because there's too many options? There's only one player over there. Did it become difficult because there's too many options and trying to figure out what order to go in? Was that difficult for a strategy point of view?
No, I mean, sometimes, yeah, but there are other times when, for instance, if my gun guys I guess they have disattack. Let's say my the brawlers who can only melee attack up close. This guy's stuck there. He can't move. So if I have a card that lets me activate 2, well, you can see there's 2 on the there's 3 on the board. He could move up 1. This guy can't do anything, and then I guess that guy could maybe attack the Ninja Turtles he's next to over there. So I have a card that activates 2 guys, which sounds great, but there's sometimes when you can't really take full advantage of the cards. So it's a give and take. Some of the cards, I mean, you really, it goes back to you really have to plan ahead and make sure you don't get stuck to a point where, I have to play a card that really is kind of useless this turn.
And that would be it for the villains is order of the card, I think, would be important too, because you play and activate, it's 2 cards at a time per round, or per turn, excuse me. So when you put down one card, you activate that completely before you put down another. So it seemed to be some strategy there of, okay, I want to get these guys moved to maybe clear the way before I lay down this next.
You cannot activate those same guys again and then the same turn.
Yeah.
But the only other strategy I can think of off the top of my head is just your focus points, knowing when to re-roll dice. That was really important. That, for instance, the game where I had the Foot Clan Elite guy, he only had 4 hit points, so don't blow all of my re-rolls on offensive. I really needed to make sure I was blocking and defensive. So use your focus points wisely to let you get the re-rolls.
One more thing, spawning. Because you can spawn as the bad guy, the enemy. You can spawn at different times. Did that change your strategy? Because the first game you can't spawn, second game you can spawn. Did that change your strategy of who you wanted to pull into your pool based upon your cards, or did that really not come into it?
No, it didn't really. To be honest, when they get knocked out, they go back in your pool. I mean, you couldn't really pull extra guys in your pool. You don't have really any control over that. So.
It's a lot of planning ahead, a lot of teamwork, I think, though, as far as the strategy goes in this game.
So the next up is likes and dislikes. So what we liked about the game and what we most would prefer to change about it.
I'll jump in and just say overall, I'm a big fan of the components, from the scenario book to the rule book to the dice that have the engraving and the painting, which is all very good. Sometimes you get the painting that's running out of the lines.
And unique painting for each character. Purple for Donnie, red for Raphael. I mean, every character is unique.
And some of the stuff here you'll see on the board is because we got the Works edition during the Kickstarter, which comes with better, sometimes nicer dice, more characters, better quality items. But overall, I still think the components are really good. The miniatures, mostly, for the most part, even though they have a lot of bendable, small, thin pieces, came fairly straight. We didn't have to do a lot of work to make them look better, to straighten them out. They have a pretty good detail overall, especially in the Works edition where you get the Eastman turtles. I think they especially look really nice after his art style.
I'll go with it's a double-edged sword here. I like the small maps because the games play in under an hour, or at least a lot of them do. And for a miniatures game to play in under an hour is pretty rare. But look how crowded this map. I mean, the figures are almost a little oversized, and so I like that it plays quickly and it sets up relatively easily. Blah blah blah. But it gets a little cramped, and I just felt like, again, like a lot of times I had choke points and I couldn't maneuver guys around, and I don't know.
That kind of makes sense though from the theme. It's ninjas. It's a lot of up close, personal. I mean, it's close quarters combat. It's not,
I suppose,
long range army Warhammer or anything like that. You're up close and personal. I think it kind of enforces that intimate atmosphere.
The one thing I'm going to jump in here and talk about the components, going back to the boards and a little bit of the artwork. As I said, I played another game with similar color distribution, similar color orientation based upon what is blocking terrain, I'll call it hindering terrain because that's what I'm used to, but hindrances. When you have a color within a color, for example, on the map that we have here, we have a item that's supposed to be outlined in black and blue, blue being that it's elevated, but the second color gets lost very easy. I could not see this being a blocking terrain at first. I really have to look, is that a black line or is that part of the artwork? It's not, the differentiation is not very clear on some of the squares, and that could be improved a little bit. It would make play a little bit easier. For example, I don't know if any of us realized that this was blocking terrain right there. No one came back to it. So that made it a little bit more difficult. One thing that I don't think was really necessary once we were playing the game, they have these manhole covers, and as you use dice, you're supposed to place the manhole covers over the dice that you use. I think there's other ways to do it without adding those chips to it, that you can like move them forward as you use them.
It's not a necessary feature, but I think it's an option. And
I think it looks cool. It's manhole covers. They're in the sewers.
Well, that's true, but I think it's just a little fidgety thing that I don't like. We didn't use them much actually during the game. It's thematic.
It depends on your style.
Yeah, it's thematic, but I think there'd be easier ways to do that without having to worry about what's covered and what's not.
It's certainly an optional rule, I think, depending on how you play.
But other than that, other than the coloring of the maps needing to be a little bit more precise, I think the models, the sculptures were really well done. The dice, we're big on dice that are die cut and well painted. But I will have to say I love the artwork on the cards.
Yeah, the card quality isn't great, isn't terrible. You certainly
yes, I'd say middle of the road. I was going to comment that middle of the road at best. It's kind of flimsy, but the artwork and the color, I mean, it really pops.
It does. That's what it draws you in. Again, very thematic. You see them in their artwork from the comics and the cartoon. And you can see them feeding through.
And the artwork on every card is different. I mean, they could have done, all of Leo's
with
cards
the corresponding turtle or character.
That is a problem though. On the enemy characters, sometimes the artwork does not match the character, and that happened on one of the cards. Whereas the cartoon at the top, the animation at the top is a brawler, but it's referring to a gunner, and that was a little confusing. Being on the turtle side, looking over, we thought he was moving the wrong piece, but he was moving the right piece based upon what's being identified.
The player boards are also nice. They're a little small for everything you put on there, especially for the health for the turtles, because you start covering stuff up. But they're higher quality than the regular card. They're a little thicker cardboard. Again, great artwork on them. They also give you a layout, especially on the turtles, because the turtles' dice aren't all the same. Leo's dice have different chances of getting melee attacks than Mikey's do, than Raph's do. It shows you at the bottom, okay, this is all the sides of his die. This is what it's going to look like. And you can see what your options are.
And the last thing is the battle books, the scenario book. Thank you. The scenario books. There's 2 scenario books in the Kickstarter bonus edition. 3 in the Kickstarter bonus edition. But there's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different storylines. You're playing through the comics, really. I mean, which is really neat. The theme follows through, and the neat thing is it's a story. So if the turtles lose the first battle, you go to a different story. It's almost like a choose your own adventure, depending on if you win or lose. I like that theme. because you don't really know where the story is going to go until you actually play the game out. So it's kind of a neat twist on the storyline.
All right. Anything else on our likes and dislikes?
That about covers it.
All right, let's talk reviews then. We review on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being terrible, Manhattan Project, for instance. 10 being a great game, go out and buy it.
What is Gears
right
of War
away.
on that?
Gears of War. I'll kick it off, though. I'm a big fan of this game. I'd have to give it a 9, I think. From the components to the way it plays. The theme comes through really well, especially with the turtles. The fact that you share each other's dice. It's like you're working together. One turtle throwing another or borrowing something from another. It comes across really, really well. Like Pat said, there's a story you're going through, like you're playing through a comic. Art style is great. It plays in a fairly quick amount of time. I mean, you can do one mission in about an hour for the most part as you go through them. It's just all around a lot of fun. The only downside is maybe the setup can get a little tedious, but that's any miniatures game is going to have that, where you're setting up picking out the right miniatures, picking out the right cards, that kind of stuff. But there's just a lot in the box, especially if you got the Works edition. I think it was 23 missions.
23, I think I counted. Yeah.
So it's pretty impressive the amount you can play it through, the amount of minis that it comes with. Just a really big fan of it. I definitely give it a 9.
I'm going to give it an 8, maybe 8.5. I don't like half, so I'm going to give it an 8. A couple different reasons. One, the color mod. This is an investment game. There's no bones about it. This is a very spendy game. Comes with a lot if you get the Works edition. It's not a cheap game, and because of that, I think that we can be a little bit pickier on the items. For example, the coloring on the map, making it more clear what is and is not. For $150, I think it should have been a little bit easier to read and to understand on the map when I just look down on it where I should go and what I'm going to do. For the cost that you're putting into this, the map I think should have been thought out a little bit more and colored a little bit more, making it a little bit easier. Other than that, I can't find much wrong with it. But for the amount of money you're spending into it, I would expect some of those items to be just a little bit more clear for ease of play.
Fair enough. I don't know if I'm as high as either one of you. I'm probably at about a 7.5, 7.5.
7.75.
It's there's a lot to like. Grew up with the cartoons and the comics and all the Ninja Turtle toys, and so there's definitely a lot of nostalgia. The teamwork part comes through, but my review's a little colored because I always play the bad guys. It's not really that I don't like it as the bad guys. I just don't like games where it's all against one. You always feel that the one person who's the dungeon master in certain games or the game master, they have no way to talk to, they have no way to plan with, they don't partake in the celebration, or when something cool happens, it's just, you're kind of there at a party sitting in the corner.
Well, you're used to that, though.
That's just the way it is. I almost think, especially with Ninja Turtles, they should have gone full co-op and they should have worked out a way. Maybe, hopefully, they'll release an expansion, although I doubt it. I haven't heard any word on something where it can be co-op and you can have an AI deck or something to play the bad guys. I don't know if that would work with the setup they have, the way you have to play 2 cards and activate them and blah, blah, blah.
I'm just jumping in here real quick. Dungeons & Dragons does that a little bit, where you flip the cards over and the AI plays itself.
Yeah,
I know you couldn't
games
do that
can do it, but so that's why I prefer that type of game. If I'm going to play a big miniatures game, I would rather it be even teams or AI. The one versus all, it's that falls in the same category as me as player elimination. Somebody's always eliminated in certain games and they don't have fun. Somebody's always sitting on the other side of the table looking at everybody else talk and plan and have fun and be the cool Ninja Turtle characters, and I'm like these thugs, and so it's not really that great from that side of the table. I'm sorry, I'm going to catch a lot of flack from this. It's okay, but because I love Ninja Turtles, the components are amazing. It's getting a 7.5. It's riding a lot on that.
Mechanics-wise, though, I mean, from the villain side, it works, right? I mean, there's
Mechanically,
about
there's nothing broken there. There's nothing. It's just not. It's a review. This is my opinion. This is not fun to play that way.
I can actually sympathize with that. In Mansion of Madness and a couple other games that we've played where I've been the dungeon master, you do lose that camaraderie of game night because it's more of a role-playing game at that point where you're the dungeon master trying to give everybody else a good time. That's kind of where your role is, and you miss out.
And so but like I said, it's a good game. There's nothing broken about it. It plays really well. It's gorgeous. I love Ninja Turtles. So I'll give it a 7.5. I'd really like to try it. Maybe it would go up if I played the Turtles, but then I'm always going to be thinking about that person on the other side of the table again.
Gotcha. I think overall, a game we definitely recommend. A fun game for your game night, especially if you got people that are in it for a little more deeper games, obviously. Check back next week and see what we've been playing.